DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special roundtable with myself and primarily and far more importantly, Hubert Cumberdale. We are going to be talking about a few different things today, mostly governance related, as well as some alpha news. So we're going to talk governance power, the Raffle Master, some stuff with cooldowns, and then go into some alpha on our next planned burn mechanic.
Beans shall be spilled.
They shall, yes. It will be just like the scene from The Office that Crypto Meme loves to share in Discord, where Kevin drops the entire giant pot of beans.
That was such a sad episode.
Actually, change of plans. We're just going to talk about The Office for about an hour. We hope you're all ready. Is something wrong with my voice? I don't know. Whatever.
Normal to me.
Okay, well, we're going to go with it then. So, first and foremost, thank you, Hubert, for taking an extra hour out of your week to be at a second live event. We are still having our AMA tomorrow as well. So appreciate you taking some bonus time to talk through this stuff with us.
Yep, no problem. I'm happy to finally get to this point where we're talking about all these things. I know we've been teasing the new burn mechanic for a while now, and I guess I'll just warn up front that it's still not like coming out next week or anything like that. This is something that would be coming probably after our initial PvP launch, so it's pretty early beans. So I guess just be ready for that, but kind of important to the rest of our discussion today. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of what we're planning when going into the votes that we're going to be talking about.
And rest assured, we will caveat that timeline like 8 more times today.
Yeah.
But hope you're all looking forward to catching some new information and new alphas. We are not going to spill it. You have to be here the whole time to hear the alpha. So to kick things off, we wanted to talk about governance power in itself as we look at these votes that we have upcoming. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Hubert, to kick things off.
Sure. Yeah. So as you know, we've had a lot of discussions about this in our tokenomics committees and other discussions on the team, and it's kind of been a topic as far as like, you know, we're talking about changing cooldown timers, having that be kind of something that impacts Gen Zeros potentially more so than other heroes. And how right now with the way voting power is set up, with heroes, every hero is worth 10, essentially like 10 voting power, which, you know, also your C jewel and S jewel is like one C jewel is 1 voting power. So with Gen Zeros being, you know, kind of a unique asset, and being, you know, there's only a certain fixed number of them. They have a kind of special utility to them. It's kind of been a sentiment amongst the team that there should be probably more voting power assigned to those. You know, and anything that in terms that we've done in terms of like assigning voting power is something that we do through governance. So it would require the community to agree, and to kind of choose an option that goes along with that. And kind of along those lines, where if we were to provide an option to upgrade the voting power of Gen Zeros, we also felt that lands should not be like right now. A single land is worth 100 voting power, and we felt that lands should also have their voting power increased so that Gen Zeros were not higher than lands, since lands are even more rare of a NFT in our game. So
real quick, sorry to interrupt, just for anybody who's following along. So right now, as Hubert said, CNS jewel are 1 vote per CNS jewel. All heroes are 10 votes and lands are 100. So that's the summary of the current weighting.
Yep. So that's how it is right now. And so what we're going to be proposing to do, now that we're getting very close to being able to do votes, is first and foremost do a vote to see if you guys would like to change the voting power of Gen Zeros and lands. So let's see, I don't have a slide to kind of provide the options, but I can kind of just kind of give you a sense of what they are, with and just noting that like we kind of set a ratio between Gen Zeros and lands of like 5 times difference. So one of the options is Gen Zeros having 100 voting power, which would then mean the lands would have 500 voting power. The other option is 500 voting power for Gen Zeros and 2,500 for lands, or 1,000 voting power for Gen Zeros and 5,000 for lands. And then, of course, there's also an option to not change anything. So that's what we're looking at doing for the initial set of our first vote. And we would wait for that to finish before we do anything else, because if the voting power changes, we would want to then make sure that that is accounted for every vote after this. Which, yeah. So I don't know, that's kind of a general overview of that. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say on that, Bolan.
Just a quick note on the timing side. So, we'll open this vote. It will then proceed and close. If it does pass, we will have a little bit of a gap until we run the next votes so that we can get those changes in place. Also, just because I foresee the questions coming, the more granular we get, the harder it is to build that system. We're already going to have to do some custom work to separate out Gen Zeros, which is fine. But, as far as the question of like, well, what if we, did mythic heroes over commons and this over that and yada, yada, yada. Realistically, a voting system doesn't support that. We already have a pretty complex voting system in that, like, we combine NFTs and ERC20s and other NFTs. Most voting systems are just straight up ERC20s or a single NFT type. So, we're looking at going a little more granular in terms of potentially separating out Gen Zeros if people agree with it. But we do have limits on how granular we can get.
Yeah, and I guess just to expand on that a little bit, just for context, like in terms of how much voting power exists right now in the jeweler, there's about 20 million total voting power there right now. Whereas with all of the heroes that exist, is assuming that the numbers I got were right, and it did not include burned heroes, we were at about 10 million total voting power, just with including all heroes that exist. So it's about 1/3 of all voting power is stored in heroes currently. So with increasing the Gen Zeros, right now there's about 3,000 of those that exist. In the future, it'll go up to 4,000, and that'll be the total limit. So by increasing the voting power of those, it does, add, depending on the choice that's made, it, could make it 14 million voting power total if like that, the highest option was selected, or, it kind of scales down from there. So, yeah, I guess that's just kind of the context, and that voting power is kind of a fluid thing as well. People could vote or could lock more into the jewelers to, make it so that jewelers has a heavier weighting. Also, more heroes are likely to be burned here in the future with the new mechanics. So there's potential of that going down, but it also could be outweighed by if a whole bunch of people do a whole bunch of summoning too. So it's a fluid system, and depends on player behavior. So but that kind of at least will tell you, how things are set up right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that gives us a good idea on the governance power side. So, like we said, if that vote passes, there'll be a little bit of a gap while we put that in place. If it doesn't, then we'll be able to turn around the other votes pretty quickly. But that will be the first vote. We will have some instructions coming on the vote. So we're going to announce ahead of time the date and time that the vote will open. When that vote opens, a snapshot is taken of your holdings, and that determines your voting power. For most of you, you really won't need to do anything. However, we're still working on getting Halliday supported by our voting system. So if you are using a Halliday wallet, you will need to delegate your C and S Joule voting power to a non-Halliday wallet, which you can do directly in our interface, and we'll provide those instructions. However, if you want your heroes to count in that vote, you will need to move them out of your Halliday wallet back into a normal wallet for that snapshot moment, and then you can move them right back. So you can use the multi-send feature, of course, do it in batches. We realize it's not the most convenient thing, and we're working on it, but otherwise we have to just keep delaying doing these votes, and we don't want to keep delaying them. So we're still working on that, but we'll have all of those instructions come out as well. All right. So going into the second round of votes, Hubert, you want to talk about the Raffle Master first?
Yeah, sure. So this is something we actually did present to the community a while back, and it kind of heralded a period of us not doing votes as we were addressing an issue with the Halliday wallet, where we realized that Halliday wallet owners were not able to vote with the way snapshot.org was set up. We've had kind of the vote delegation as kind of a stopgap for that, and as well mentioned, still have a need to migrate heroes to a different wallet if you want those to be counted right now. But we're also getting close to having a solution for Halliday users to be able to vote without needing to do those things as well. It's just not quite there yet, but it seems like it's getting quite close. So that'll be great once that's all solved. But so anyway, this topic isn't necessarily new, but it might be new to some of you, and that is just making adjustments to the Raffle Master. Kind of this came up as kind of from community sentiment, especially around the mini raffles that happen, I believe, every 15 minutes, being, I guess, too frequent and giving out too many rewards and being difficult for the average player to keep track of. So we removed those entirely and kind of shifted the rewards from those into the next step up, which I believe is the 6-hour one. I should have had I could share it, but it has a bunch of other tabs on it. We should have been a little bit more prepared, I guess. My bad. But I can kind of talk to it at least. There's just I don't really want to share what we have, but we'll get a sheet that can be shared to you guys after this is all done, so you can kind of see what the new breakdown is. But yeah, it'll, instead of having 4 different types right now where it's 15 minutes, 6 hours daily and weekly, it'll just have 3 different types instead: 6-hour, daily, and weekly. And things have been kind of just shifted all in all into the to generally, it doesn't really actually result in most of the resources being produced less frequently. It just makes it so it's, there are basically more options available in each of the tiers. And let's see, as far as like how things changed, let's see, the majority of resources will have a slight increase in daily payout. The ones that will have a decrease are stamina vials will be going down by about 10%. Shavas runes will be going down by 75%. In exchange, we're going to be increasing the Moksha rune payout by about 30%. And we're doing a major change to the egg payout. That's going to be dropping by 95%. And then let's see, the other like regular crystals and stones are going up just by a pretty small percentage, like 2 to 4%, depending on which ones we're talking about. And then we'll be adding Gaia's Tears as something that can be paid out, as well as greater enhancement stones will have a new addition, though it's a pretty slow payout on those. And in addition, we'll be reducing the amount of greater enhancement stone or greater attunement crystals that will be given out as well. So Right now, there are 3 different packs that are available on the weekly raffle system, and we have now 10 different options instead for that. So it'll make it so like the weekly raffles will be a lot more variable in terms of what's available. The packs have been split into, like, as far as like packs of crystals and packs of stones have been split into type. So there's a martial pack and an arcane pack. So the martial pack does strength, dexterity, vitality, and endurance, and then the arcane pack does the other 4 stats. And then there's also a new chaos pack for that just includes only chaos crystals or chaos stones. We'll have that to share. You can kind of see how that's different once that's out. I think I saw Bolin making some copies of things, so that might be something that will be available here in a second. But and I guess to elaborate a little bit more. So this would be a vote just to accept the new raffle system or not. A no vote would just keep what we have in place right now in place. But this is something that, like I said before, that we did present previously due to a request from the community. There's a pretty strong sentiment to do so. So this is us circling back to that and finally getting that in front of you guys, and you can decide if you want to do that or not.
Perfect. Yeah, I did start making some copies, but I think it'll be easier to just share the spreadsheet after this rather than trying to screen share it.
Yeah, I think so too. So we'll probably want to just double check and make sure that if we have a before, we show the correct before, because I know there was like an error in that previously. So Yep.
So we'll get that set up as well. Awesome. So that was kind of the highlights of the Raffle Master. Like Hubert said, shouldn't be that new of a topic necessarily, but I think you'll all be pleased with what we've come up with. We hope. We'll find out. So with that, let's talk heroes.
Okay, so this is a topic that's been, we've discussed it for probably I don't even remember how long it's been since we had that initial RFP. I think maybe over a year at this point. At the time, we didn't really provide any information other than just asking if there would be support for us changing summoning cooldown timers, kind of that was voted no on that, though a lot of the sentiment that we got was that we didn't provide any options or discussion around it beforehand, so it was kind of out of the blue, and there may have been different decisions made if we had talked about it more. At least that was kind of what I gathered from what I saw from the community, what I heard from those that I talked to in different podcasts. I think I've talked about this topic at least 4 or 5 times now on different podcasts. Most recently, I think there was even one even more recent. I think talked about it very in depth, kind of recently with the Mythic Squad anyway. So the reason we're even talking about this at all is to kind of address a sentiment and concern about hero inflation and hero value, being that with the system as it is now, hero inflation is too high, hero value is dropping, and what can be done to try to address those concerns. And as far as like addressing inflation, there's really 3 things that we can do. One is to introduce more burn mechanics, which we will be talking about that a little bit later. Another is to increase cooldown timers, just to kind of reduce what the maximum flow of heroes could potentially be. And then the other would be to increase summoning costs themselves, which would kind of deter some people, and also I think that one ties more into hero value itself. Just because if summoning costs were higher, then people would be able to list their heroes at a higher cost, I think would be kind of the result of that. Though that third option we're not going to really be talking about today. There hasn't really been a lot of community discussion around that or support around that. So we'll just be talking about cooldown timers and also burn mechanics today. So I guess with that said, I guess with cooldown timers, we did do a bunch of analysis. I made a kind of brute force maximum potential case for like how many summons could be made if every Gen Zero were summoning at their maximum capacity, and every hero that came out of that also summoned at their maximum capacity, and kind of use that as like a baseline for determining, okay, if we were to adjust cooldown timers, how would that affect the max? And I think in terms of like analyzing it in that way, people might ask, well, the reality is not that not everyone's summoning at maximum capacity. Like higher gen heroes are not being used as much for summoning. And then there are, a lot of people that just, maybe have Gen Zeros but have left the game, or just don't summon as much with them anyway. So it's not apples to apples per se. But I will say that, my assumption, and I stand by this, is that there is going to be some degree of correlation between like the actual amount of summoning that occurs and like the maximum case. How much that correlation would be is hard to pin down per se, but I think it would be at least more than a 20% correlation, but probably less than like a 50%. And the part that's not correlated, I think we would see with Gen Zeros. We would, they would be producing fewer Gen 1s. The Gen 1s potentially would be taking, because there'd be fewer of them, they wouldn't be summoning as much. So I think we'd see a shift of summoning happening to more of the higher generation heroes. And also we just might see, some of the Gen Zeros that aren't being used as frequently might start being used more as a result of this too. So when I talk about like percentage impacts of these changes, I'll just say, in the maximum case, the impact is this much, but the realistic case is, somewhere between 20 to 50% is what I'm estimating as like how it will impact the hero growth rate. And that's not including any considerations towards burns. It's just looking at, just summoning by itself. So, I think with this, proposing this, kind of trying to attack this at two different angles, adding new burn mechanics and also slowing down the rate at which heroes can be summoned, would, I think, be the best approach to just, make an attempt at reducing kind of the state that we see things. So, I don't know, Bullen, if there's anything more you want to say, I can keep talking, but if you want to break me up with any commentary there on that, I haven't been reading the chat, so I don't know if there's any comments that would be worth addressing.
There's a question about what the vote options will be, which obviously we'll be getting to in a moment.
Yes.
And then I think you're planning on speaking to it anyway, but if you are not, if you wouldn't mind speaking to a little bit the difference in potential impact of like not including Gen Zeros versus including Gen Zeros, since that's where a lot of that impact comes into play, but that may be in your plans already. So carry on.
Yeah. So again, I think we'll kind of be sharing what these options are, like in written form, which I think will be easier to digest because it is there's kind of a lot of words to explain what they are, unfortunately. But let's see, let me get to where they are here. Okay. So yeah, I looked at just adjusting, like, what if we just adjusted the cooldown timers of Gen 1s and above and didn't adjust Gen Zeros, versus what if we just adjusted Gen Zeros, or what if we did both? So with Gen 1s and above, I did look at doing something where their cooldowns started above 24 hours, like even when they are initially summoned, and then the doubling happened on that value. So you'd be like, say, for example, 32 hours, and then the next one would be 64, and so on. For like Gen 1s, and then like kind of following a similar pattern to how it works right now with the higher gens as well, just with the initial summoning cooldown number being higher. And over like a a 1 year period of time that resulted in about a 7% impact in like the maximum case. And the reason why that number is so low is just because so many more Gen 1s were being produced by the Gen 0s that that kind of compounding effect of the Gen 1s then producing, Gen 2s and those, each subsequent generation beyond that being able to add to the total production, like that is like by far the biggest impact. So by comparison, changing the maximum cooldown of Gen 0s from 3 days to 7 days resulted in a 55% impact on the maximum case without changing anything about Gen 1s and above. So combining those two, that results in a little over 60% of an impact to what the maximum case is. And that's assuming all the Gen 0s are at their max and are summoning every day. So like if we then take the correlation down, then you were talking optimistically maybe a 30% impact to inflation, potentially lower than that, but also kind of a shifting of behavior in like what people can summon, and also like I guess how Gen 1s would be valued because they would be more rare. So that's kind of how that would play out. With the other analysis I did, I also looked at doing a maximum of 14-day cooldown timer for Gen 0s, and combining that with also the kind of change to Gen 1s that resulted in over an 80% impact to the maximum case, which then again maybe 40% impact or less for the realistic case. So but that's also assuming that everyone's at all the Gen 0s are at the peak, like that max. And like even by adjusting the cooldown max, we wouldn't actually be adjusting like the growth rate. So it'd still be 4 hours different every time you summon. Like if it's 3 days right now, the next time you summon would be 3 days and 4 hours, and the next 3 days and 8 hours, and so on. So even getting to that max would take from being at 0 summons to then would take like a year and a half to even reach that maximum of constantly summoning at there. So I think realistically, if we were to make this change, and I guess one other point I'll make is what we're adding in these proposals is for Gen 0s in particular, is this would include a semi reset of their summon counts, not to 0, but to have it be the next time they summon, they would be at 19. Which 19 summons would be like the point where the maximum, like you'd be going above what the maximum was previously. So that's, I guess, as another point, like right now it takes 18 summons on Gen 0s to reach that 3-day max. With a max at 7 days, that would, like with maximum summon, that would be reached from 0 in half a year. With a max at 14 days, that would be reached in like a year and a half. So it just because of the extra time it takes for each summon, it kind of grows not in a linear way like that. So yeah. So as far as options that we would be presenting, it's basically those two options, or an option to not change anything. So would be change the maximum to 7 days on Gen 0s. They would get a reset to 19 on their next summon. Gen 1s and above would have their cooldowns adjusted to follow a specific formula, which I can paste that formula in here. I know everyone loves math so much, and I have more to share later. But here is in the comments at least the formula for Gen 1s and above. So 24 hours plus 8 hours times the generation. So that means that Gen 1s, that would be 32 hours. And then for Gen 2, it would be 40 hours. And then just increase by 8 hours for each generation above that, times the summoning count plus 1, meaning so this would be also eliminating the 24-hour automatic cooldown that all gens get. Instead, they would just follow this cooldown from the beginning. And doing so like then it just if you summon once and your cooldown was 40 hours, the next time it would be 80 hours, and the next time would be 120 hours. So this wouldn't be doing just an impact to Gen Zeros. It'd be kind of a shift across the board for all heroes, so that it's not, so it's kind of a shared impact amongst everybody. So.
And one point of clarification got asked in chat, and I answered it there, but just to say it out loud for anybody listening, the summon reset for Gen Zeros, it would not be a reroll. It's just changing their summon count back to 19 if they are over 19.
Right. And I guess for context on that, there are, I have way too many tabs open. Okay, so as far as like the number of heroes that would end up being reset by this, there would be 2,101, or at current, at least from the data that was pulled before, that would be eligible for that reset. So more than 2/3 of the heroes the Gen Zero heroes that exist right now have more than 18 summons. So that would be kind of the total impact there. And as far as like on the 7-day change, if it was changed to 7 days, that would mean that you'd reach the maximum at 42 summons. Currently, there are 1,763 heroes that are at that number already. So like over half of all Gen Zeros have summoned at least that many. And if it were the 14-day instead, that would be 84 summons to reach that point. And there are 1,080 heroes that have summoned at least that many. So about 1/3 of all Gen Zeros have summoned at least that many. So that kind of will help give you kind of a sense of, at least in terms of Gen Zero impact to like hero inflation. About 1/3 of them have, I guess would reach that point of like maximum change impact. Does that make sense? So it's kind of hard to describe what I'm trying to say, I guess. But so sorry if that's a little confusing, guys. But at least hopefully that gives you a little bit more context on like the state of things.
And that's why we're looking at, if this passes, doing that reset to 19, because that Gen Zero that has 90 something summons on it would go from a 3-day cooldown to a 2-week cooldown just immediately. So rather than doing that, they would come back down and then begin that climb again. So that way it's kind of an evening out. Nobody's hero goes from 3 days straight to 2 weeks. That impact gets greatly lessened, and then it climbs naturally.
Right. And as I mentioned before, it does take a lot of time to get to that maximum. So I guess, let's see. As far as that goes, I do have that here. So going from 19 to, how did I do this? Let's see. So yeah, going from 19 to 42 summons would be 38,000 hours, which is, oh wait, is this? I feel like I'm messing things up. Yeah, sorry, I'm not gonna do that math in real time. I don't want to mess things up and say the wrong thing. But anyway, it'll be a long time to actually reach that maximum. So like it's like I said, we'll be resetting it, so it'll be kind of a gradual feeling. Like the impacts to Gen Zeros will be kind of more and more present or noticeable as time goes on. But in the immediate state, it'll be like nothing had changed on the Gen Zero front. On the Gen 1 and above front, though, the cooldown timers would be adjusted immediately. So the next time a summon happened, it would be based on that new formula, assuming it was one of those two options were voted on over not changing things. So
nice. Quality question from chat, which is how ranked choice voting works. So I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. Hubert, feel free to cut me off if I'm just way off base here. But basically the way that the ranked choice works, so for this vote, for example, for the cooldown vote, there will be 3 options. You will actually vote for
theoretically all 3 options just in your order of preference. And so what happens from there is if one option gets over 50% of first choice from everyone, then that option essentially wins. If that does not happen, then it's see, now I'm blanking. Hubert, do you
Everyone's second choices gets added in to the totals, and then at that point, if there's one that reaches above 50%, then that one becomes the winner. And if that still hasn't happened, then the third choices get added in as well. I think I don't know mathematically if that actually even the third choice actually ever will play a role. I think by the second choice, when there's only 3 choices, it'll work itself out by then.
Yeah, I think you only get to 3 if you have like 7 options.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So, and we have the interface Fox has mentioned in our AMA that he put together an in-game interface for that, so it will be able to have votes in-game, and be able to message that in-game and whatnot as well. So I'm really excited to be able to do that, and yeah. So. I don't know if there's anything else to say on that front, but
I am also dropping a link in chat, and we'll share this link as well. But it's snapshot.org's explanation of how ranked choice works. So if anybody wants to read the actual description, it's right there. But we'll share that out with the first vote as well, just so that people can start to familiarize themselves with how it works.
It seems Stick's intern does not like this explanation we gave on how ranked choice voting works, but hopefully, I mean, at least that kind of like you have, it's a little bit more involved anyway. You're not picking one thing, you're ordering the votes that you want to do. You're like, I like this the most, I like this second most, I like this the least, kind of thing. And then then the rest, kind of as we described before, will.
Yeah, and I think Snapshot also calls it instant runoff, which I think is probably an even better description for it. But basically, that'll walk you through it, where it's based on first choice only first. If that does not get a 50% plus result, then the least popular is eliminated, and the people that voted for the least popular as their first choice, their second choice comes into play instead.
Okay. Yeah, that was, I guess, different than what I said too. So
I
should have just read that from the beginning. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, we are very prepared.
We were unprepared for that question of how ranked but I mean, I think that kind of covers it on the cooldown. As Hubert's mentioned a couple times, but everything we're talking about here, we are going to have in writing for everybody as well. So please don't feel like if you miss something, this is your last chance, or you have to re-listen to this a million times. We will have a written version of everything to make life easy for folks. But we wanted to take the time to kind of talk through it. We've been able to, grab some questions from chat and that kind of thing, which is also super helpful. Sticks intern approved my second explanation. Thanks, Sticks intern. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits to ranked choice, to be honest, like rather than just straight up yes, no voting. And then
I agree with what Sticks intern said about how it should be used in other places in the world as well, but without getting too political.
For sure. That's why it all needs to be done on the blockchain. But yeah, so just to summarize on the cooldown front, there will be 3 options. One option is no change, but the other 2 options will include changes both to Gen 0s and Gen 1 and above. So it will be everybody that's impacted, but there will be the option of how long Gen 0s go that people can also pick between.
Yeah, and the changes to Gen 1 and above, it's the same change on both votes. So that would be either way. So it's really, if there is a change, it's that change is happening with either of those options, and then it's just a decision on what's the new maximum for Gen 0s.
Perfect.
So
all right, I think it's time to go into the reason that half of these people are listening right now.
All right, and yeah, I'm betting this is probably going to go over an hour. There's quite a few different slides on this new thing, but yes, it is time for us to introduce to you guys the new burn system, which will involve a new resource, and I kind of like calling it two different things. Like what's actually happening is heroes are transcending. What you're getting out of it is divine essence. I'm going to kind of use those two terms interchangeably, but I think we can get into starting to share that presentation, and I can kind of start explaining what this whole idea is.
I just want you to all know as we go into this that it just burns my soul that we're spilling this alpha, and it makes me feel like I'm failing at my job as alpha police. All
Nice.
right, it's killing me. All right, here's the alpha. Let's go.
Alrighty. So, yes, hero transcendence and divine essence. So, what is happening in DeFi kingdoms in the future? So, essentially, the main lore of this new system is that there's an ongoing battle amongst the gods. Essentially, Gaia and her allies are fighting the void. We have talked about the void. We have void shards. The void is kind of slowly making his presence or its presence known. As we have dark summoning, we see that the void is also corrupting creatures in the land with the void hunts. And in the background, outside of the realm of DeFi kingdoms, or like outside of the place where heroes exist, the gods are in an eternal struggle against each other in their godly realm. And they are now looking to have heroes join them to assist in that battle. So heroes are now given the option to transcend and join that battle, and leaving the mortal realm in the process. Effectively, that means the heroes that transcend are burned. They will no longer be yours. They will be, removed from the ecosystem. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll never see them again. But there's more to be seen on that in the future, and we'll kind of be. I'll just tease that a little bit because it's not going to be something that's immediately available. But with heroes are kind of a special class of creature in DeFi kingdoms. They were saved by Gaia, and kind of crystallized, not really crystallized, but kind of put in stasis for a long period of time as the world was destroyed. And they are now, being released and available for all of you guys, and they can summon. And a part of that is there's kind of a whole divinity to heroes in general, like their ability to summon, to access the inner grove and pull more heroes from it. All has a kind of divine aspect to it. So every hero has their own like degree of attunement to the divine, and with them being burned or transcending that attunement, and then the amount of divine essence that they have will be left behind is kind of how this system is going to work. So I'm not going to read what's written here, but we will be sharing this presentation after this, so you can read a little bit more. It kind of goes into the lore a little bit better than I can describe it. But essentially, though, what happens is after heroes are burned, there will be some divine essence left behind, potentially some greater divine essence left behind, as well as a little bit of lesser attunement crystals. And also there's a potential for void shards as well, which I will get into.
Real quick, just two things. One, just a reminder, we're reviewing this feature today because it relates to hero population, which is why we want that information out prior to the votes. However, this feature is not done in terms of, implementation. It will still be a ways out. Hubert mentioned earlier, it'll probably be at least after our first phase of PvP. So we are very excited to be talking about it, but just as a reminder, it's not coming tomorrow. Don't ask me if it's coming next week, because it's not then either. But also, just a reminder that, as of course, it is subject to change. We're going to go pretty far, I think, into some of the math and whatnot. So just as a caveat up front, this is still subject to change. If y'all have thoughts on it and all that afterwards, obviously we're happy to hear those as well. But just wanted to plug the quick reminder. Also, to all of the questions in chat, calm your horses. We'll get there.
Yeah, so definitely. We are going to be sharing hard numbers here just to help kind of give a good sense of how the system is currently designed. But yeah, it is possible that we will change things. And I would also be remiss to not shout out to Burr, who was being the main guy I was tapping to help design this whole thing. He did all of the analysis and listened to all of my feedback and made all of the changes that I wanted. And it was a pretty long back and forth, as this is kind of going to be a pretty impactful system. And we wanted to make sure that we had a good equation for how we were doing all of this. And we were using, we're really looking at all the angles of how this impacts things, because this is going to impact things a lot. So how will it impact things? Here are the first 4 ways that it will be impactful, but there will be more in the future. We will be offering item upgrades, where you will use Divine Essence to be able to upgrade runes, upgrade enhancement stones, and attunement crystals to their higher tiers. With runes, it will just be from Shavas to Moksha for now, but there will be future upgrade capability into other runes as well. There will also be an option for players to re-roll their level ups by spending Divine Essence. There are rules around that, and I'll get into more details there. But essentially, if you have a bad level up, you could potentially spend some Divine Essence to get another re-roll, and you could potentially re-roll multiple times, like if you don't like your second re-roll either. So there will be that. There will also be an option to use Greater Divine Essence to completely reset the level of your heroes, and be able to level them back up to where they were without needing to gather the requisite experience points for that. However, you will need to pay all of the other level up costs and go through the same process of leveling up for each level with that. And then finally, equipment restoration will be available as well, also using Greater Divine Essence to restore a piece of equipment back to maximum durability and maximum repairs. And there are rules around that, and the costs have kind of a growing scale to them if you do it multiple times. But those are the initial features that would come along with this. And then just on the little note at the bottom there, we also have plans to include Divine Essence in crafting recipes, in certain potions, as a way to avoid permanent death for your heroes, and more, which kind of gets into that thing I alluded to at the beginning, as far as these heroes may show up in different forms in the future after they've transcended. So I guess these are some pretty consequential features. Being able to reset level ups or re-roll level ups, for example. Like, there are some times where you can get a really bad level up and just get one stat. That could then be avoided potentially by re-rolling that, though it may happen again. You may have to do it multiple times. But I guess the key point to note here is that for each of these things, at least one hero had to be burned to allow a hero to be able to do this. So these features are coming at the cost of other heroes. So I think it will kind of be a balancing measure in terms of, these are really nice and powerful features, but it will come at a cost. And the only way to get Divine Essence and Greater Divine Essence will be through doing this hero transcendence and hero burning. Any comments before I keep going, Bolan?
A lot of very positive comments, and then uh, Daz wants to know if they can keep the bones and teeth for crafting. I feel like that would be more applicable to the Dark Summoner. This is like the positive. This is, you're going to serve Gaia and the Holy Army, and he's trying to pull out their teeth.
Yeah, it's more like Obi-Wan and getting lightsabered by Darth Vader, and he didn't leave much behind other than his robes. It's more like that. We're not like actually, witch burning at a stake here. So they are transcending. They are just going somewhere else. They are going to the realm of the gods and helping the gods. So there will be no bones left behind. There will just be this essence. So,
The other main question that I've seen so far, which I think is probably addressed later in your presentation, so it's up to you if you want to answer now or not, but if Divine Essence and Greater Divine Essence will be soulbound or tradable.
I don't think I actually mentioned that in here, so I'll just say they will be tradable. So and if you don't want to burn any of your heroes, there may be other people that were willing to burn theirs, and you could get the Divine Essence from the market from them. So yeah. Okay, I guess I'll just keep going on then. So how does this all work? The first thing is, I guess the most important thing, is that we are going to be assigning a value to every hero based on some of their properties. Those properties being their class rank, meaning like basic class, advanced class, and so on, their subclass rank, their rarity, their level, and then their summons remaining. So heroes that have more summons are going to have a higher hero score than something that is at 0 summons. And also, this is impacted by heroes that have already been touched by the void. Heroes that have been dark summoned will only be able to produce just Divine Essence. They will not be able to produce Greater Divine Essence, and they will also only produce half as much Divine Essence as regularly summoned heroes do. And in exchange for that, they will have the potential to produce void shards, as that will be kind of void shards are essentially eating that divinity away from those heroes. So there is kind of going to be a dynamic there between dark summoned heroes and normally summoned heroes, and currently void shards don't have a use that will change in the future, and when that is changed, there's now going to be a second source of void shards in burning or transcending dark summoned heroes, which would be joining the Void's army, not Gaia's army. So that's kind of a top level overview of how that is going to work. Hero score is a pretty dynamic thing, and I will be sharing the math of that at the end. But let's see. There is also one other thing that will be a part of this as well, which will add kind of a treasure hunt mechanic to this whole thing, in that the gods are looking for specific heroes. There will be a reward in increased hero score, which means increased Divine Essence and Greater Divine Essence rewards or void shards for heroes that are burned first, or like the first 5 heroes that are burned of a specific given category. So these categories would be class, main class, not subclass, rarity, level, and the summoning method, as well as the realm that they were burned in. So Serendale versus Crystal Vale will also have their own specific trackers for these multipliers. So like a level 10 common monk that was normally summoned, the first one of those would produce 5 times as much of a hero score, which has the potential of 5 times as much Divine Essence and Greater Divine Essence. The second one, 4.2 times multiplier, and it goes down until the 6th and above summon, or not summon, but transcendent burn would go to the regular 1 multiplier. So we'll have a way to kind of easily see like what the multiplier is for a given hero. So I think this will kind of create a situation where people, it encourages burning. You're going to get higher rewards. And so like the first person to burn like a level 20 Mythic Dread Knight is going to get a lot compared to the 6th person. So I think this will be a great system to encourage people to find specific heroes that haven't been burned yet and be able to burn them. And then this multiplier it only goes down until it gets to 1, and then once it gets to 1, if no heroes in that category are burned for 30 or more days, the multiplier will start to climb back up until it will reach back to the 5x multiplier after 100 days of no heroes being burned in that category. So it'll kind of be kind of an ongoing system of rewards there that players will be able to look at and take advantage of. And it's something that I'm really excited for. But yeah, just kind of to show like these categories down here. A level 10 common monk dark summoned is a different category than a level 10 common monk normally summoned, and is also a different category than a level 10 uncommon monk that's normally summoned. So there are quite a few different categories available, and that list will grow as we increase the level caps, as we increase the number of, or like the different types of heroes that exist, and as we increase the number of realms that exist as well. It'll be kind of opening up a whole new, like I guess, gold rush or divine essence rush to kind of get these multipliers if you can. So I think that should be pretty fun. And
real quick clarification, which it looks like there's getting clarification in chat too, but the multiplier is global. It is not per user. So if somebody beats you to it, you don't get that multiplier. So multi-walleting doesn't do you any good,
right?
Because it's a global multiplier.
Yeah, it's truly the first 5 of that hero category burned by anybody will get those multipliers, and then once that's passed, then it's so it's truly a treasure hunt. It's everyone is in the same hunt there. So,
and Dr. Zipper would like to know how many categories there are.
I don't want to do the math right now, but there's a potential for 32 classes. There's 5 rarities up to 100 levels, 2 summoning methods, and currently 2 realms. That will go up to 4. So you multiply all those numbers up together, and that's
a lot. It's a lot.
But right now I think there's 22 classes. So yeah, and only 20 levels. So if you want to know like the current number, you should use those, I think. So. Okay, continuing on. I also mentioned that actually this is a new thing also. There will also be we'll be adding tracking of attunement crystals and enhancement stones that are used on heroes. And heroes that are transcended will receive a flat number amount of divine essence and greater divine essence or void shards, which the void shards kind of I'll get into that, how that works. But for example, if you used a lesser stone on a hero and then transcended it, you would get 1 divine essence in addition to what you get from its hero score from that. If you would use a regular enhancement stone, you get 3.2 and 0.2 greater divine essence, or a greater enhancement stone gives you 17.6 divine essence and 1.4 greater divine essence. And then similarly for crystals, for each crystal used, lessers give you 0.1 divine essence, normals 0.4, and greater attunement crystals, for each one you get 3.6 divine essence and 0.2 greater divine essence when they're burned. So that'll be kind of a new amount of tracking that we'll be doing on those things. So this is just a flat reward with the divine essence and greater divine essence. Those actually have some randomness in terms of how much you'll receive. So I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later, but this is flat. Yep.
Sorry, just to circle back for a moment onto the previous slide. Sorry. First off, Dr. Zipper said there's 64,000 categories currently. Sure, we'll go with it. However, there's a question about Harmony heroes, but I just wanted to clarify. It's the realm that they're burned in, not the realm that they were summoned in. The summon method is just standard summoning versus dark summoning, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So that's the summon method. There's only ever 2 categories in that. And
okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's that. So void shards. So one thing about void shards is that they are a base, like they have a 0 decimal token. So we can't give you 0.2 void shards. So instead, how void shards are going to work is, for example, this is with a roll of 1, which I haven't really explained how the randomness works, but I'll just say basically it rolls a number between 1 and 20, rolls a d20, and or more than 1d20 potentially. But again, I'll explain that later. And based on that roll, the amount of divine essence and greater divine essence you get will change. But the hero score is a flat value that's calculated and then potentially multiplied by that multiplier I mentioned earlier. But say a roll of 1 happened and you had a hero score of 42,000. That would mean you would get, for a normally summoned hero, you'd get 49 divine essence and 3.234 greater divine essence. For a dark summoned hero, you'd get half as much divine essence. You'd get no greater divine essence. And then as far as the number of void shards you'd get the integer number of what you would have got of greater divine essence here. So you get 3 void shards. And then there are going to be rolls to see if you get any more in addition to that. So, and that's just using, it starts off with whatever the decimal number after that is. So 234 would be 23.4% chance to get another one. If that is a successful roll, it would roll again. It would divide this number by 4. If that is another successful roll, it would roll again and divide that new number by 4 until you get an unsuccessful roll. So it's possible that you can get 7 or 8 or 9, but the chances of getting too many more than the base number is pretty low. Like getting 1 or 2 more is not that low of a chance, especially if it's like 3.99. But 3 or 4 or 5 more is going to be a lot more uncommon of an occurrence. So hopefully that makes sense of how that would work.
Did you talk a little bit about like what a 42,000 hero score hero would look like?
I did not. The math will kind of, Dr. Zipper did ask me to add that, and I intended to, but I ran out of time. So I will share the math, and then you guys can plug in the numbers to figure out how to get to a 42,000 hero score one for the guys that want to do math. But yeah, there are some charts that there's a lot of info that I didn't include in this just to like keep it clean and top level. So, but I know that there are some math sleuths out there in our community that will dig into this deeply and will have more to share on this. So I will rely on you guys for that. Okay, just in the interest of time, just moving on here. So there will also be the opportunity to earn lesser attunement crystals from your transcended heroes as they are burned. The way this will work is we'll look at the top 2 stats of the hero and divide that by a denominator based on its rarity. So and then whatever numbers that comes out of is rounded up, and that's how many of either that or lesser chaos crystals that you get. So for example, say you have a common hero that has 40 strength, and that's its highest stat. It would, and let's say its second highest stat is 30. It would be able to get potentially two lesser might crystals, and potentially also 2 lesser finesse crystals. But with the second stat, there's also a random chance tied to that. So there's only a 5% chance that you'll get anything off of the second stat for a common hero, 20% chance you'll get something from an uncommon hero, 40% for rare, 70% for legendary, and 100% guarantee that you'll get crystals off of the second stat for that. And also, as you go up in rarity, the number that you divide by goes down. So like say that same amount of stats for like 40 strength and 30 dex on a legendary hero, those numbers would be divided by 12 instead. So that would mean you'd get potentially 4 lesser might crystals and potentially 3 finesse crystals, lesser finesse crystals on that. And then for every crystal that you get, each one will have a roll of 25% to have that be a lesser chaos crystal instead. So you'll get kind of a mixture of lesser chaos crystals and crystals that are aligned with the stats of the top 2 stats of your hero. And it'll vary. So you'll get a lot less with common heroes than you will for mythic, though. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of, again, it's very mathy. We'll on the like the breakdown, we'll have a breakdown of what kind of rewards you'll get like when you're actually doing this process, so you can kind of see what the amount that you would be able to get potentially, and then the chances of getting the second stat and everything like that. So it'll all be broken down. We'll try to make it so you don't have to think about it too much. But for the min-maxers out there that like to dive into the math, this is kind of how it works. So any questions on that so far? Or anything else I've mentioned that you want to bring up, Bolan?
Not too much that I've seen so far. I think it'll also help people as they get a better understanding of like what the hero score kind of relates to.
Right.
I think it would be correct to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, like even the 42,000 example, like that is not a basic hero.
No, it's a pretty high powered hero.
Like, a lot of these examples are like, even the one on the previous slide that talked about greater divine essence, like you're not getting greater divine essence for a potato.
Not very much. Yeah, it does. You'll get a minimal amount, but it'll be pretty low. Like you might get 0.05 or something.
Right. Yeah, they are decimalized as well, which I think somebody had asked about as well. So they are decimalized, the both divine essence and greater divine essence. So yes, you can get fractions, including small fractions. Dr. Zipper's estimated like a 42,000 hero score being probably an advanced mythic, which I think is probably about right. Yeah, like these are good heroes to get those kind of payouts.
Right. Yep. So, and then I guess to just keep going here. Here is what we currently have for the cost for upgrades. So to go from lesser crystals to normal crystals, you would need 6 of that type of crystal, 1 divine essence, and 5,000 gold. To go from normal crystals to greater crystals, you would need 3 normal crystals, 3 divine essence, 0.5 greater divine essence, and 20,000 gold. And then for the stones, you need 3 lesser stones, 0.5 greater divine essence, 8 divine essence, and 40,000 gold. And then 100,000 gold for the greater stones, 20 divine essence, 2 greater divine essence, 3 normal stones. And then on the moksha runes, it'd be 10,000 gold, 2 divine essence, 0.1 greater divine essence, and 16 Shavas runes to make 1 moksha rune. So that's how we have it set at the moment. These values came about after a lot of analysis and thought. Though, as we mentioned before, it is always possible that we may adjust these formulas as well. So just take this as this is months before we have this system out standpoint. But it should at least kind of give you a good sense of the direction that we're thinking.
Quick question from chat that I'm not 100% confident on myself, so I'm going to ask you. Do the levels affect the crystal payout or just the rarity for the crystals?
The levels don't directly, other than that being higher level means you have higher stats, which means you can get more crystals.
Okay, so the stats do, which come with levels. Cool.
Yeah.
This is not being implemented today.
Not today, no.
as I see all of you in chat going to sweep the tavern, still do what you want. Your choices are your own, NFA. But as a reminder, yes, this is still going to be months before this is actually implemented.
Yep. So okay. So how level up rerolling works? So it is. For first off, you would only be allowed to reroll level up if your hero has 0 experience points. So the moment so essentially leveling up is a hero kind of ascends into a new state. They meditate and they find a new path for themselves of growth. And as soon as they've gone and done a fight or done anything that gives them experience, it sets them on their path. So only when that path is still not fully set are you able to do a reroll. And the cost for that is it starts at 2 divine essence. Every time you do a reroll, that cost goes up by 2. And then every time you do a brand new level up, whatever the cost currently is goes down by 1. So like say you rerolled once 1 level, the cost went up to 4. You didn't reroll again. Next level of the cost would be 3 if you re-rolled at that point. And then you would go to 5 and say you didn't like your result. You did it again, it'd be 7. Then the next time you leveled up, it'd go down to 6 and so on. Also for every 5th level where you get the bonus stats, there's an increase in what the total cost would be. this increase doesn't carry over in terms of like it doesn't compound. So like say you rerolled once, it costs you what would normally cost you 2 if it was an uncommon hero and it was for the 5th level, it would cost 3. And then the base cost would go to 4. And if you wanted to reroll again, it would end up costing 5 for that. Just so it wouldn't be 6, I guess, if that makes sense. It doesn't, what you get here doesn't compound into like the base cost. But this table here kind of shows like how much that increases. So if you're rerolling mythics, heroes level up, that's the 5th level, 10th level, 15th, etc. You would have to be paying for each reroll. You'd be paying an extra 5 on top of what the base cost is. When you do a reroll, you don't change anything with how you set up the reroll. So the bonus stats, the blessing stats, and any crystals that you used, none of those can be changed. You don't need to pay additional runes or anything else. You would just be paying divine essence to do the reroll, and you can't undo a reroll once it's done. So if you get a worse result, that's just what happened. And if you want to try for a better result, you'd have to reroll again. Yeah, so that's how that works. Anything on that one or anything else before I keep going?
I don't think so from that one yet. Probably more from the next slide.
Okay, the next one, level resets. So how this works is, you would be harnessing greater divine essence, which is harder to come by, to reset a hero. They go back to level 1. They are set so that they can level up without needing experience up to where they had reset from. Like as I mentioned earlier, you would still need to pay the normal cost for leveling up. So runes and power tokens, attunement crystals, all that stuff you'd need to do that again. With the reset, how that would work is we'll be tracking anything that's like a permanent stat increase that came from something unique, like the Perilous Journey, from using atonement crystals, from using anything during summoning, like the extra Gaia's Tear effects or anything else. All of those increases that you got will not be reset, so they will be treated as like a permanent impact on your hero, and so you don't need to worry about losing those. And also with the cost, the first reset of a hero would be 4 greater divine essence, and then every reset of that same hero from then on would it's an increase of 4 greater divine essence each time. So that would be 8 if you did it a second time, 12 for the third time, and so on. And that cost does not change ever. It would carry with the hero forever. So it'll just get more and more expensive to reset them if you want to do that multiple times. So,
all right. So let's get into the weeds on this one a little bit. But so for something like Perilous Journey, for example, or even like the Gen 0 rerolls that have included stat increases, you don't get to reassign those. You just don't lose them either, correct? They stay on the stat that they are already on.
Yeah, so basically we'll be tracking for every hero what their initial stats are, their level 1 stats, and those will get updated anytime we do anything that does a permanent increase outside of standard leveling.
All right. And then as far as like the crystal usage goes, basically it would just reset all of that as well, correct?
Right. Yep. Anything that you gained from using attunement crystals would be lost. So there is a consideration there. If you have a hero that you did, I see this being used more by people that maybe leveled up their hero in a bad way or just got really unlucky for many levels, and rather than burning it, they it is like a mythic or it's something nice, or a Gen 0, for example, where they would want to use this. I think there's a lot of cases, or even maybe the meta changes and the path that they decided to do, they ended up not liking as much as maybe going a different route and just want to kind of respec their hero entirely. I could see it being used in those cases. I don't expect people to be completely resetting their heroes all the time. Although I guess I will note that, as I said before, atonement crystals in particular, the gains from those are going to be permanent, and they so like if you were to use atonement crystals on your heroes and then reset them, that would give you the opportunity to level up with different standard attunement crystals for those levels instead. So there may be people that want to do that, to kind of like have kind of min-maxing a bit there.
But it will still enforce the atonement crystal limit of 1 per hero.
Right, yeah, you won't be able to use another atonement crystal on that hero ever, of that type, but the gains that you got from those, which are kind of permanent set gains, those would also not be
Right.
removed.
And then so level will reset, stats will reset mostly, except for permanent changes. But profession score, other genes, none of that is impacted, only level and stats.
Correct. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. And then lastly, for equipment restoration, so this is my first, I guess I already shared math once today, but here's my second sharing of math. It's pretty straightforward in how it works. So, I mean, with equipment, we will be turning on durability, kind of around the same time as when we release this. And once we do that, you'll have to repair your equipment once it gets to 0 durability. Once you run out of repairs, the only options available to you will be to turn the equipment into dust, which we'll have more to talk about that once we get to that point. But just as a kind of a reminder of what's been said in the past, equipment dust will be used as a primary ingredient for enchanting, and will also have other uses in other crafting formulas as well. And along with dusting, you'll have the option to convert that equipment into a visage as well, is another thing that we're planning to do. But so you'll have that option, or you can restore it using Greater Divine Essence, which will just restore it back to as if it was brand new, restore its repairs, restore its durability, and the cost to that is something that also will grow and follow that specific piece of equipment until its grave. So it's 0.005 Greater Divine Essence times whatever the maximum durability is of that equipment, times 1 plus its repair count, so how many times it's been repaired, and then times 1 plus its restore count. So for each time it's restored, that's just going to be doubling the effect. So there's kind of a table that breaks that down here. If you have something that hasn't been repaired and you decide to restore it for some reason, you'd just be paying basically the cost off of its max durability, which would only cost you 0.15 Greater Divine Essence. If it was something that had 5 repairs, you used all the repairs up, then you'd be paying, and it hadn't been restored before, 0.9 Greater Divine Essence. If it's been restored twice already, then the total cost after it's like at minimum durability would be 2.7 Greater Divine Essence. And noting that this is just looking at your max durability, not your current durability. So you would be able to do this if you had like 1 durability left if you wanted to, but the cost isn't going to change if you have like some leftover durability. So, oops. So those are all the features. Next is all the math. So I guess if there's any questions or anything, any clarification before I start getting people probably already glazing their eyes over, but even worsening that effect.
One question on the reroll. So if you have a level up and you reroll the level up, does it also reroll the HP and MP gains or only the stats?
It would include the HP and MP gains.
Nice. Cool. That was it. Carry on.
Okay.
I don't know how I don't know why by what measure we're just now getting into the math, but I'm excited for more math.
I mean, yeah, you'll see. Well, there's this real math here. All right, so here it is. The hero score formula. It's a lot. So we are, like I said, we're taking into account all these different factors. The class. So class, subclass, rarity, and summons amount. So these numbers here, like the variable names, are not necessarily very intuitive, but this is class based, rarity based, summoning based. So the class score is based on this table here. So depending on what rank they are, which right now Transcendent rank doesn't exist, but that would be what would result out of a Dread Knight paired with its partner, and a mutation happening would be Transcendent. So if it's a basic class, a C base is 150. So you'd plug in 150 right here. If it's, and then we also look at the subclass, but it's weighted at only a quarter of the value. So say you have a basic class like a monk or something, then it'd be 150 plus 150 times 0.25 would be the class base score. So that's how that would be how that part is calculated. And then for rarity, we have a rarity table here also based on its rarity. So rarity base common has a 0 on that, uncommon 1,000, 3,000, and so on. And this should say mythic, not transcendent.
I was gonna point it out, but you beat me to
So
it.
I'll make sure to fix that before we do that. This is mythic, not transcendent. So yeah. So anyway, you with the rarity score, if it's common, you get nothing. This whole thing gets multiplied by 0, and you get nothing. However, if it is anything else, it's actually scaling off of your class score. This is the same, well, close to the same math as the class stuff, except there's also a 1 included here. So, which actually I question that. I wonder why that's there. I might need to look at this again. There might be an error here. I'm not sure that this is necessary or was in the final result. But anyway, this is a not very consequential number compared to the rest, and so your minimum is going to be in the hundreds. So I think this is just not there. Anyway, very prepared. Anyway, so that's how that works. And then for the summoning base, again, this is kind of tied to... Did I not include that table? I included this instead. Man, there is a table, and it is something, and I don't know what that is now, unfortunately, but it's kind of tied to the class rank, since the advanced class can only have 5 summons, elite can only have 3, exalted can only have 1 summon, transcendent has 0. So kind of tied to that, like how many summons they have left. There's a different kind of table tied to that. I'll make sure that that's included before we share this. But that amount would be kind of in here as well. And then the summons, and then there's also kind of a scoring based on the level of the hero as well. Since, you know, the higher level you are, the more you can benefit any heroes that you summon with. Every 5 levels, you can give them extra bonuses. So that's kind of accounted here in this math. So once you've calculated all 3 of these factors, you add them all up, and that gives you your base score. And then finally, there is the hero score is that multiplier we talked about that's based on the burning, times this factor that's including the hero level, times the base score, which is also multiplied by the level score, and then the base score is added a second time. So it's a pretty involved formula. It's not easy to really explain at all. I expect maximum glazing of eyes at this point, but this is all something that would be happening in the background for players. You would just be able to say, okay, what's my hero score? And like every hero you have, you'd be able to see what its hero score is. So like it's something that will just be, it's not a random value. It's a known quantity. It just needs to go through these equations to find out what that is. So in game, you'll be able to see that without needing to think about all this math. So don't worry too much about it. But for those that really like to look at and dive deep into the math, this is mostly correct. I have a feeling that there's maybe a mistake or two in here. Plus, I'm missing a little bit of info. So apologies for that. But anyway, so this is all that goes into hero scoring. Obviously, it's pretty complicated. We've put a lot of weight into making sure that it felt like all the different factors were in place, that everything kind of scales off of level, so that it's much harder to get a level 20 hero than it is to get a level 1 hero, and we wanted to be sure to account for that, and I think we did a pretty good job there. But yeah, so there is that.
Hopefully, even without doing all of the math directly, it kind of gives an idea of if we were talking about a common monk, that is not a 42,000 hero score hero.
Yep.
So I think it can help give some perspective, at least just from looking at these numbers. Your hero score is going to be a reflection of that hero. And if you feel like it's a potato, it probably is, and its score is going to reflect that.
Yeah. Let's see. I have some tables that I can look at real quick here just to see. Kind of for example, your common heroes are, let's see, kind of your range at like level 1 for common heroes is between like 300 and 1,000 hero score. And getting up to level 20, it can be between like 500 and 1,500 or so. And then like as you go up in rarity, it can grow a lot. So, and then when you go above like level 20, it really starts to, the level impacts really start to kick up a lot, especially for like an advanced hero as level 100 in Mythic. You were talking in like the 600,000 hero score range versus a level 100 common is in like the 50,000 range. So I mean, level 100 is really far away in the future. So it's just kind of to give you a little sense of scope as far as like we're talking scores as low as in like the 300 to 400 range up to over 600,000. And this is only talking advanced. I'm not even looking at like transcendent heroes and beyond, which would be even more.
But yeah, if you're wanting those big payouts of divine essence, greater divine essence, or even void shards, like it's going to take good heroes to get those.
Yep. So, all right. So there's that, and then we get into like how that actually plays into how much divine essence you get. So here's the divine essence formula. So there's a minimum that you'll get, which is based on this factor here. So your hero score times 0.7 divided by 600. That's the minimum amount of divine essence you would get. And then what you actually get is going to be based on a dice roll of a d20. So it's basically these factors here, or actually, so there's the minimum plus this. So the roll, there's actually, you can get more than the minimum. You can get like 2 times the minimum, I think. Or it's not 2 times. Anyway, so you take your roll. Oh yeah, actually, if you roll a 1, then this just all gets zeroed out. So, but yeah, you take your roll, and if it's 20, it's 19 times your score times 1 over 100, 1900. Add that to the minimum, and then also any benefits that you would have got from any crystals that you use on that hero and any stones you used on that hero. So that's kind of how that breakdown works for divine essence. And then for greater divine essence, it's a bit different. There will be 4 d20s rolled, and you get the lowest of the 4 rolls. So getting a 20 is much harder on greater divine essence. The average roll you're going to end up getting is 4.52. And there's no minimum in the score here. It's just this formula. But I mean, you're still going to get something because there's a 1 right here. But anyway, so your score is multiplied by 7 divided by 100,000. Plus you get this increase by the base of the roll, and then whatever gains you would have got from the crystal score and the stone score. With void shards, it would use the same formula and figure out like what's the integer amount based on this formula, and then what's the not integer amount, and then that not integer amount would be those extra rolls for potentially more void shards. So if this is below 0, you could get no void shards, or you could get some based on whatever those rolls are. But like in terms of like the amount of divine essence to greater divine essence that you would be getting, it's about a ratio of 16 to 1, just based on how these formulas are set up. And that's it. That's all the math. So I do need to add a little bit more to this to make sure that you can actually calculate this, since there's some missing information for these formulas. So again, apologies for that. I did kind of make this in a little bit of I didn't spend as much time as I should have, and I'm sorry. But hopefully this at least kind of gives you the general overview of everything to do with this system. I'm very excited for it. I think it, like I said, it's hugely impactful with all the different things that you're going to be able to do. Keep in mind that even though that these are like very large changes to how powerful heroes can get, kind of the permanence of heroes and whatnot, like all of this comes at the cost of heroes being burned to do it. So like even like doing a level reset, if you were to do it using Greater Divine Essence that came from common heroes, it would be a number of common heroes burned to do this once for one hero. Yeah. Anyway.
Dags did say thank you for not making us data mine the math. Somebody would have been trying to analyze the ever living hell out of this.
Yes.
But no, we're just going to give you the math, make life easy. So again, a couple reminders. This will still be a few months before we're looking at implementation. We will get this cleaned up and share everything in written form so that you have it. That's what I was going to say. I do have one other topic that I want to take just a minute for us to speak on. But before we get into that, I'm really excited about the idea of the permanent death avoidance, but I also feel like it might be too early for us to say anything. But I was just going to leave that up to you and see if you wanted to say anything on that front.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, what this opens up is, I think we've talked a lot about void hunts or other hard combat or content, or even like in PvP having there be like permanent death attached to that. And I think the one thing that causes is making people not want to use their best heroes for that content. And that could potentially lead to people not even wanting to we either have to scale the difficulty down a lot or just not a lot of engagement. So I see this as, if we instead had, it's like, okay, you can bring Divine Essence and it's going to be this much per dead hero to save them. Like it's as if heroes did get permanently killed in the process. It's just not the ones that you took with you. So I could see that being a way for us to have more features that include permanent death. And you could also just not bring Divine Essence and right on the edge and have, if you do fail and the heroes die, it's just those heroes that you brought that died. But you could protect them with this kind of catch-all amount of previously other heroes were burned for this hero to survive kind of thing.
You're sacrificing your infantry to save your knights.
Yes. So that's kind of the concept behind that. I think I'd like to use, as we get deeper into the game design and are adding just a lot more combat content and aren't building out as many just core features anymore. I would likely be doing a lot more thinking about this. I one thought I have is like with void shard hunts, in particular, those ones, maybe all of them having a permanent death included as a risk to kind of go along with the reward there. But yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Again, this is caveat that we're very far away from that being a thing, so things could very much change, but that's the direction that I think applies very well with the way this Divine Essence system works. I think also just using it in some recipes for crafting and potions just makes it pretty interesting, that we could have some essentially pretty powerful potions available for people to use, but each one would be like there's an element of a hero died for this potion to exist kind of tied to it. So I think there's a good balancing there. So yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm super excited for that. I think it's an awesome mechanic. So real quick, and we don't have to take a lot of time on this necessarily, but I saw some people in chat mention, with the plans for Divine Essence, do we still feel like a summoning cooldown adjustment is needed, called for, recommended, whatever we want to call it? So, I mean, I'll say for myself, and then I'll let Hubert say whatever he wants to as well. But we mentioned kind of at the beginning that there's 3 levers to pull
cooldowns, cost, and burn, right? If we look at only one of those levers, for example, burn, and say, with Divine Essence coming, we don't make any other changes, Divine Essence will, slow inflation adequately. First and foremost, a lot of it depends on what you as a individual and as the person casting your vote feel like is adequate slowdown of inflation, if you feel like inflation is a problem currently. However, one thing that we have seen actively with dark summoning is that with the current cooldown setup and the current cost of summoning, it's really hard for burning to make that impact, to make like that sizable of an impact. So, I go back to an easy example, which is the last dark summoning event we did. We did a week where we had a bunch of incentives around dark summoning. We had 3 times as many heroes burned in that week as we did on average the weeks prior. And it did not actually change inflation at all. I believe it was identical numbers from the week prior in that week, but it really didn't make a dent because people just summoned more to make up for the additional heroes they were burning. So yes, burn is a factor, just like cooldowns is a factor. But in my opinion, at least, I think it's a problem that needs to be approached from multiple angles, which is why we're looking at this potential solution to where we can slow down the rate at which heroes can be produced, as well as add another reason to burn heroes. And those two things can come together to achieve a result. Whether or not that is your personal desired result is entirely up to you, and you should vote the way that you think is best. But that's my perspective, at least. Hubert, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think that was really well put, and I agree wholeheartedly that we aren't even close to what the maximum amount of summoning can happen right now with the heroes that we have. Not every Gen 0 is being utilized, not every hero beyond that is being utilized. Even with just adding new burn mechanics, it'd be very easy right now to just replace any heroes that are burned with new heroes. I am of the opinion that this does need to be tackled from multiple angles, and by just slowing down what the actual capacity of Gen 1 production is, and just the amount of heroes, or how quickly Gen 1s and above can summon as well, it will it will kind of have two effects. That will, the supply will then have to adjust more. The supply won't be able to adjust with the demand as easily as it would be if we just did a burn mechanic. As Bolon mentioned before, with that last burning thing, the supply kept up with the demand of heroes to be burned completely 100% at that time. I think we could see probably an increase in demand, especially initially, as people are doing the treasure hunt for Divine Essence and trying to go for those multipliers. There will likely be an increase in demand for heroes, and so people will be summoning. People will be. I think I saw someone posting that, I think you mentioned it also, Bolon, that people are already hitting up the tavern right now. But just if we only, if we're only increasing the demand and the supply can keep up with it, it doesn't necessarily impact anything with inflation or hero value per se. It still could. But if we, the concerns that came from the community were, too much inflation, hero value going down. If we want to address those things, the more levers that we pull of those 3 levers that Bolon mentioned, the greater of an impact that we will have. However, that's up to you guys. I mean, these are, this is a community vote. It's a community decision. It's a very big change. So if you feel that, it's fine as it is, we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what was coming, so that we didn't have people upset that, they voted one way and we hid this information in advance. So that's why we're giving it so early. At least from my perspective, I think it would be better to have increased cooldowns, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, just to pull out a couple things from a couple of comments. Gen 0 supply is overall static short of future expansions. That is correct. However, not all Gen Zeros are being used currently. I believe it was the stream you did with Mythic Squad where you busted out the math on like what could happen within 90 days if every Gen Zero summoned.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I have that. I can say it again. If every Gen Zero was summoning and every hero that was summoned by those Gen Zeros were also summoning, in 90 days, there would be the capacity of producing 42 million heroes.
Yeah.
So
no,
we
obviously,
are not even close to that, even with just like the current amount of heroes that exist right now. So this is where, it really, the correlation of like the max versus present is like, there's the power summoners and then there's, people that summon less often. But if we are just kind of putting the brakes on everybody, there will be some degree of correlation between what the maximum impact would be versus,
right.
So.
Which kind of ties into the other comment about, what happens if we 5x our player base. Yeah, that's fantastic. That adds more demand to heroes again. But as it currently is structured, the supply can accommodate a lot of levels of increased demand. So if we only address the demand side and do not address the supply side, then the ability for the supply side to continue to keep up with increased demand is very much in the realm of reality.
Right. And yeah, even just as I mentioned, like if all Gen Zeros were at a new cap of 7 days, and that was the only thing that would change, like the maximum capacity of everybody summoning, which again, not realistic, but that maximum capacity is still 18 million heroes in 90 days. So like, even with these reductions, it's still the max. We're still far away from the max. It's just, slowing down the people that are active players. It's just, the overall capacity can go up a lot more than what it is right now, but we can put the brakes on how fast that can go up, and how far it can go. So yeah, I guess just keep that into perspective. And I guess also if it was the 14 days instead, that number drops down to 9 million in 90 days if everybody was summoning with all the heroes. So, and that's just looking at just the impact of Gen Zeros. That doesn't include also the changes to the Gen 1s and above. So,
and yeah, again, the idea of everyone summoning every single hero at max capacity, highly unlikely. Yes, but the ability to continue to meet higher demand with more supply right now is pretty wide open. So,
yep.
Cool. I think that was I think that was really all of it. There was a request in chat for you to just run through the whole presentation again.
All right, let's go. All right, so hero transcendence, divine essence. Yeah, I guess one other little tidbit. I want to say just a little bit more about future plans about Gaia's army and the Void army. And I said it may not be the last time we see those heroes. I'll just also mention that we are going to be recording which wallets burned which heroes, which may be of importance in the future.
For reasons and things. I forgot that they couldn't see our pretty avatars, but now our PFPs are back. But no, really appreciate you, Hubert, for taking the time to go through all of this. I know it was a lot. As final reminders or repeated reminders, I guess, we're still talking about months before this comes out, but we wanted to review it prior to the governance votes. B, we will be having, written versions of everything that we went over today. So there will be kind of, I'm going to say summaries. They might be expansive summaries, but they'll be written at least. So stay tuned for those. The first vote will be the governance power one to see if there is a desire to change the governance power of Gen Zeros and lands. Once that vote is completed, if it passes, then we'll need a little bit of time to implement that. We aren't expecting anything too crazy. Talking about potentially a week or two. and then we can start up the second round of votes. If it does not pass, then we can start those up pretty quick after that. So stay tuned for details. We will be notifying everyone of when we intend to start those votes, so that they can make sure their assets are in the right places for the voting snapshot. Oh, Sergeant, you just got here in time to see us end, but if you rewind, you can see what it looks like when we start a stream on time. I know you struggled with that last week, but love you, Sarge. Anyway, but yeah, those were all of my final reminders. Hubert, any final thoughts, reminders, comments, anything else?
No, just thank you all for being here today and listening. I know it was a long one, an hour and 45 minutes. We had a lot to say, and I've been like, it's been very exciting as we've been building this Divine Essence system. Like it's so consequential, but I think we put it in such a nice way, like how it can help with hero burn, and just how we can also fit it into the lore and the different things that allow us to do without kind of like breaking, I think, other systems is really exciting to me. I'm excited to hear feedback from any of you guys if you have any. So you don't need to DM me directly, of course. You can talk on Discord and other places, and I'll hear about it or see it. But yeah, again, thank you all, and happy voting. It's a good finally return to doing some governance votes. So I hope you all participate, and we'll have more details on that later.
All right. Appreciate you guys. And we will catch you tomorrow for our regularly scheduled. Oh, that was the last reminder. Dang it. We will be having our AMA tomorrow. If you have questions about any of this, please submit them to the talk site. If you put them in Discord, I will try to grab them and keep track of them. But if you put them on the talk site, I definitely will. So if you have questions about any of this that you'd like us to address in the AMA, please do put them on the talk site. And other than that, we will catch y'all tomorrow for our AMA.
DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.